What's going on, guys? We're back. We are going to do a reaction slash breakdown to one of the OGs of this industry, if you will, Cappy Army. I've been watching Cappy stuff for a very long time. And this is an episode that says the worst infantry combat footage. Most of you guys know I was in the infantry in 2 different units here in Ukraine. So I figure, hey, I might have a little bit of insight, or at the very least, I'm interested to see what he's got here. Do me a favor, like, share, subscribe. Obviously, go check out Cappy's channel. If you've found my channel, you probably have already seen his. Like I said, he's one of the OGs. He's up there. He's up there with the Preston Stewarts and the Civ Divs and the Cappy Armies, and you know what I'm talking about. So. Also, our Discord, you guys, our Discord is blowing up. We keep all of our uncensored footage there, all of the gruesome, nasty shit we can't show on YouTube. Also, a ton of other resources there that is not so disturbing. All kinds of stuff. I won't even list it, but go check it out. Discord link down below. All right, let's jump into this, huh? Let me minimize my face. Boop. Boop. Let's get after it.
Some of the worst, most intense infantry combat footage from around the world, from Ukrainian forces to Chinese People's Liberation Army and even Delta Force. We'll see how no matter how much air power or tanks you might have, the outcome of a battle often comes down to an infantryman and his will to fight. To better understand...
Hey, quick update, by the way. Our local power plant just got droned to shit a couple days ago, so literally we're working off of like 2 hours of power a day in the town that I'm at or living in. So I'm trying to record as many videos as I can within this 2-hour span, and then ideally I'll post them at the regularly scheduled time. So bear with me, you guys. I'm trying to throw up some more shorts because those are easier to put in with the time allotment that I have with the power outages. So anyways, just so you're aware of why things have been a little sporadic
and the type of tactics used and lessons learned, our team created animated maps and 3D recreations of the battles. This rundown is intended to help viewers understand some of the harsh realities of modern infantry combat and the human decisions behind every engagement. Our first engagement is from early in the war in Ukraine, where 15 American and British members of Ukrainian Foreign Legion face off against a Russian armored vehicle.
I need to push back! Move! Move back! Back! Move!
The recording we're watching here is being taken by Ben Grant, a veteran of the war in Afghanistan, a former British Royal Marine, and a son of a member of parliament. It starts with the British and American fighters falling back alongside Ukrainian forces after receiving heavy contact. They're evacuating a wounded comrade, yelling that they need to get out of there now.
Come on, my brother. Come on. I've got you. Come on, Dino. You're okay. Come on. Come on. Strong guy, we gotta move now. We're gonna die. Move.
Grant is helping carry his wounded buddy over his shoulder, encouraging him to move, risking his own life to help rescue his teammate, even though carrying him is slowing him down under heavy enemy fire. It shows the kind of sacrifice individual soldiers make. After a few minutes, they stop at a clearing and use the moment to provide first aid for the wounded soldier by applying a tourniquet to his leg. The medic believes he'll likely keep the leg, but that he's down and out for the remainder of the fight, because the fight has only started. Now that they've regrouped and rallied, they prepare to do something unexpected.
Hold on. I just reload. Come with us. Let's try and hit this tank. Where's the road? We're going to get the tank.
They're going to counterattack an armored vehicle head on. But before we get into that, all of the animation work in today's episode was sponsored by Jocko Fuel, because not all energy is created equal. A ton of energy drinks out there have too much caffeine, or they're freaking stuffed with tons of sugar in it. To get
That's intense, man. I remember seeing this guy in the Foreigner, or in the I believe this was the International Legion in the early days, like when all of the really well-trained U.S. and British soldiers joined the International Legion, and then unfortunately a ton of them died really early on. But early on, the International Legion, dude, was goated. It was like a whole bunch of fucking Rangers and Royal Marines and like really solid guys. And unfortunately, this war is just so brutal. A lot of them didn't make it very long. And now the Legion's mostly filled with much less experienced guys than what we're watching right here. But also that guy, his buddy who was injured, Cappy brought up a good point that he is slowing himself down to attempt to save his buddy. Not, a lot of people think like, well, yeah, that's obvious. That's how you're trained. That's not here. It's not. In Ukraine, it's not. Ideally, you always want to save as many people as possible, but it's not a requirement, if you will. So seeing somebody do that's very cool.
Have you got an anti-tank weapon? You're just gonna... Hey, let's go get this tank.
Drone surveillance overhead has identified the armor's location. They don't yet know what type of vehicle. Each member of his squad grabs an anti-tank weapon and they close with the armored vehicle. We've geolocated the battle to this exact location here. Grant and his team uses the terrain to their advantage by going through the dense forest. They move as far from their last known position as possible. They're in the woods here, which is about 15 kilometers north of the major city of Kharkiv. It's just south of the town of Veliki Prokhody. The road here is a choke point. It's one of the only routes Russian armor can easily take down south into the city of Kharkiv from the Russian border, so it's a very strategically important location. The squad sets up a kill zone here for the enemy armored vehicle. They use the woods as cover and concealment to get as close as absolutely possible. A friendly drone is watching overhead, pointing out the location of the Russian forces' armor. The troops have with them at least 3 anti-tank systems. You need redundancy when you go into something like this. Well, it looks like a Czech RPG-75 that fires a 68mm rocket. It's capable of penetrating 300mm of armor. Then there's the German Matador, it's a more upgraded, more modern anti-tank weapon, carried by the soldiers whose point of view that we're looking at here. You can see the probe sticking out of the top of the barrel of the Matador launcher. That's its fuse. When the probe is extended, the fuse is set for high explosive anti-tank.
Brian, you lead. Go, 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 go.
Right here we can see it's actually a BTR-80 that they're going after, and it's only about 50 meters or half a football field away.
That's so close.
Just far enough away from their weapons for the warheads to arm. But there appears to be a problem. This soldier's RPG-75 either fails to fire or the operator fails to deploy it correctly. It's not uncommon for old stock to fail to work. But, fortunately for them, the cameraman steps up to fire his Matador. The Matador has optical scope and further penetrating power of up to 500mm of armor. We see it's a direct hit. The moment where they choose to expose themselves to potential BTR autocannon fire is the moment of truth.
Oh my god.
BTR.
We've seen this clip before. It actually recently came out, but look at this. There's a guy comes out right here, dude.
Autocannon fire.
He's got a PKM. That's fucking crazy. I'm hoping because the angle that we're at on his GoPro, it's not actually as close as it looks like it is to that guy, but holy shit.
Fire is the moment of truth. The 90mm warhead flies through the air at 250 meters a second, slams into the side of the BTR-80. BTR-80 only has about 10mm of armor rating there, which is really only rated for small arms or not even armor-piercing heavy calibers.
Yeah.
It uses a shape charge from the Matador, and the heat warhead produces...
I was going to say, especially earlier on, if they were the older BTRs or BMPs, it was pretty common for people to use PKMs with armor-piercing rounds, so 7.62 by 39 armor-piercing rounds, and they would just punch holes straight through the sides of these things.
This is spalling internal damage to the crew specifically, because it's not necessarily meant to get a hit on the engine, because the hot fragments fly through the hull and can knock out the soft targets and essentially just destroy the vehicle. Then we switch over to the overhead friendly drone view of the engagement.
Nice.
We can see the Russian vehicle continue to move after being hit. They manage to hit it again, but it keeps moving. the Russian BTR is able to back up and drive away under the cover of the tree line. But we see the Ukrainian infantry team is able to hit it again with another anti-tank missile. The final shot they take misses, but at this point the vehicle is unable to move or the crew has been knocked out. The infantry team then exfiltrates back into the safety of the woods.
Strong work, man. That's great.
They have to control the fear and not let it shake their hands. It's difficult to imagine what's going through these soldiers' minds at this moment. Most troops I've spoken to about fear say that they turn it off. I've always found disassociating can help, although I don't know if that's mentally healthy. Photographs taken later revealed the extent of the damage done to the BTR-80 with giant holes ripped through the armor. Since then, Kharkiv, the country's second largest city, has remained as part of Ukraine so far. The actions of individual soldiers can change history. A key aspect to consider here that we don't often think about or train on is how to conduct an orderly retreat. They could have been fully routed and disorganized while falling back with wounded in the beginning of the engagement, but they instead counterattacked successfully. A lot of people say the Chinese People's Liberation Army has zero combat experience.
Really good point he just made. At the very beginning of that clip, he talks there. They preface it as the foreigners and the Ukrainians are retreating, and they even had a 300, a casualty. So they were able to pull back, and a few of them were able to pop back up, take out that armor, do a counterattack, and then continue the retreat. I mean, that's pro moves right there.
Since the 1970s, but that's not entirely accurate. Their forces were involved in a major firefight in Sudan that ended up becoming kind of like China's version of Black Hawk Down, sorta, kinda. It didn't go great for them. In July of 2016, the capital city of Juba descended into all-out fighting between government troops who were loyal to the president and rebel forces who were aligned with the vice president. What was supposed to be a peacekeeping mission turned into a nightmare for the Chinese soldiers who were stationed there under the United Nations flag. There were 700 Chinese troops defending the compound, basically an infantry battalion. 15 of the Type 92 wheeled armored vehicles were there with light machine guns. China has deployed hundreds of PLA soldiers as part of the UN mission to protect civilians and secure key areas around the city. These are not combat troops in the most traditional sense. They were lightly armored, lightly armed peacekeepers meant to monitor ceasefires and escort humanitarian convoys. But when the ceasefire broke down, their base suddenly became a target. The fighting spread block by block, artillery and RPG fire raining throughout the city. In the footage, the perspective comes from cameras inside the Chinese UN peacekeeper compound. It opens with a dusty, chaotic street scene inside Juba. You can see PLA armored personnel carriers painted white with UN markings positioned near the perimeter wall. We can see the Chinese troops are taking cover behind their armored vehicles, scanning the tree line. Several soldiers drag what appears to be an injured comrade back behind cover. The PLA troops appeared to not be well equipped to handle this situation. Some of them...
Sorry, guys, I'm looking at my phone because I just got an error alert. It says 5 Tu-95 strategic bombers are currently airborne. Authorities are monitoring the flight. Further notifications will be made about the event in the event that it becomes a threat. That seems like a threat to me, but anyway, sorry.
Demonstrate discipline under fire, but the limitations of the light UN armor and confusing rules of engagement help to stifle their response. One of the Chinese armored vehicles takes a direct hit from an RPG round. The blasts rip through the hull, killing 2 Chinese soldiers instantly and wounding 6 others. We can actually see on video the interior of the destroyed armored vehicle here. The scene of the video is chaotic. Inside the UN compound, Chinese and Rwanda peacekeepers tried to hold their position. According to later reports, some Chinese troops temporarily pulled back after taking heavy fire and were forced to abandon their positions. The battle around the compound lasted for hours. Over 3 days of fighting, there were 73 civilians who were killed and 20 injured. A report found that the UN failed to protect the civilians. The attack killed 2 Chinese peacekeeper, Lai Li and Yang Shupang. Both were honored by China's Ministry of Defense, and the event was broadcast across Chinese state media as a moment of national mourning. And whatever our opinions on the CCP or the Chinese government might be, doesn't really matter, because we're looking at these engagements from the individual soldiers' perspective, and those Chinese soldiers who died were failed by not having the firepower that they needed on that day. Back in Beijing, the incident sent shockwaves through the military establishment. It was one of the first times that modern PLA soldiers had been killed in a foreign conflict zone since their Vietnam border clashes in the 1970s. So this event revealed how a small firefight can influence an entire army, because lessons from Sudan and Juba would later go on to influence the PLA and how they operated in their deployments in Mali, Central African Republic, and development of weapons and training after this. If you're finding this rundown valuable so far, hit the like button. The next engagement should...
It's hard to, I mean, that's interesting. I never heard about that. And that's what's cool about Cappy's channel. I want to do more breakdowns of his content, because it's not just Ukraine stuff, you know. That's where my expertise, if you will, that's where my experience comes into play. But it's still interesting for me to see these different combat scenarios, especially because what's happening in Ukraine right now is really the bleeding edge of combat technology and strategy between drones and recon teams. And there's, with the exception of maybe Israel, there's no other nation in this kind of a fight. And here in Ukraine, it's a peer-to-peer battle. In Israel, you're talking about very well-trained soldiers against a bunch of terrorists with AKs. So much different than what's happening here. All right, let's watch.
Shows why violence of action is drilled into troops when it comes to urban warfare. Every infantryman's nightmare. Shortly after the October 7th attacks, this battle happened. An Israeli Defense Force engineer was separated from the rest of his platoon inside of a building. As they were clearing a room, he got stuck outside on the balcony. 2 Hamas fighters are inside the room still, though, and it's between him and the rest of his platoon. He exchanges gunfire with them and eliminates one of them. The second Hamas fighter shoots at him to suppress him, so the IDF soldier ducks behind cover. The fighter uses that opening, though, to throw a grenade onto the balcony, and it blows up directly in front of him, maybe 1 meter right in front of him, and it sends fragments of shrapnel into him. He seems surprised that he's still alive and just wounded, picks himself up, and does something I would consider pretty unthinkable. He presses forward and charges directly at the enemy. A lot of times we think of grenades as just huge giant fireball explosions that kill everything, but it's not exactly that way in real life. He then gets around a corner and the fighter takes a shot at him, misses, and the IDF soldier empties his magazine into the enemy, dropping him. There's a lot I couldn't show you in this video. We had to edit out and censor. We kind of had to sanitize these clips due to this being YouTube, but if you want to see the uncensored version, I do a weekly combat analysis rundown on Pepperbox if you're interested. The next engagement comes...
Hold on, I want to break this one down.
We kind of had to let him miss exactly. Just
also, we'll try to put this. Check out his Pepperbox video, but also we will put this uncensored content on Discord as well. Like I said before. So there was a couple things I wanted to mention here. Cappy mentioned that a lot of people have this perception of frag grenades being like these nuclear warheads, right? I'm being dramatic, but these massive explosions. And it's something we talk about a lot on my channel here, because we throw a lot of fucking grenades in the infantry here. When you're doing trench assaults, trench clearing, bunker clearing, all of that stuff, you frag it. CQB, you frag it. You don't know if somebody's there, you frag it. You thought you heard something, you frag it. I mean, when in doubt, you fucking frag it. So it's very common to have these frags going off very close to you, just on the other side of cover right here, right? If there's a wall and you throw the frag around and boom, right there, you learn to become pretty comfortable with frags and knowing what the different types of frags, F1s, RGD5s, RGD4s, what they're capable of, their explosive perimeter, right, their kill radius. So interesting stuff. But all right, so yeah, let's cover this. This guy is absolutely a badass. For one, that grenade is very fucking close.
And cover. The fighter uses that opening, though, to throw a grenade onto the balcony, and it
literally like 4 feet away. That's insane.
Blows up directly in front of him, maybe 1 meter right in front of him, and it sends fragments of shrapnel into him. He seems surprised that he's still alive and just wounded, picks himself up and does something I would consider pretty unthinkable. He presses forward and charges directly at the enemy.
And so, kind of a little snippet of what happens here. He pushes into that room, and the Hamas fighters were basically just taken. They were shocked. One of them was caught with his rifle down as this guy comes around the corner, and he just drops him, and then he drops the other one that wasn't even looking in this direction. So, pretty interesting. If the Hamas fighters knew this guy was on the balcony, that's why they threw a frag grenade there. I wonder why they wouldn't have kept eyes on that doorway, you know? But maybe they didn't know he was there. They just thought about it, and like I said, we do. You just frag it if you think somebody's there.
A lot of times we think of not exactly that way in real life. I tell you in this group, but if you want to see the uncensored version, I do a weekly combat analysis rundown on Pepperbox if you're interested.
All right, sorry. I'm just making sure we're good there.
The next engagement comes from Ukraine, from the 3rd Assault Brigade, during the counteroffensive in 2023. This is one of the best examples I could find, best quality video footage that I could pull up, of modern assault on a dug-in fixed position and trench lines in coordination with drones. There's a lot of lessons to be learned. It starts with the Ukrainian soldiers taking artillery fire as their squad of 5 moves up on the enemy trench. They go over the plan for the assault once more beforehand. The plan is for a fire team to suppress the trench as they move up on it, and they unload grenades and clear it out. The dark humor of the infantry is on full display, though. One soldier says, "What if we get killed?" "That would suck," answers another one. Then another soldier says, "Let's go, the wait is killing me." Soldiers often hate the waiting more than the inevitable.
Yeah.
We see the view of the drone that will be assisting them. They begin the assault, and some of the Russians start retreating, others surrender after one Ukrainian is wounded. 2 Russians are defending a trench here. The Ukrainian infantry move up on them. The Russian soldier in charge goes back to his lower-ranking troops, yells at them, and tells them to go defend while he takes cover. These Russian troops go out and they take their positions and start suppressing fire. The tactics the Ukrainians are using is suppressing the enemy enough by gaining fire superiority through volume of fire. The opposing force will be forced to duck down and be fixed in that position. This allows the Ukrainian team to move up and advance and start deploying their grenades. The thing of note about this battle is the Ukrainian team is in constant contact with the drone overhead, getting real-time update on the position of the Russian soldiers and adjusting their fire based on it. The Russians begin to retreat from the trench. Russian armored vehicles show up at this point. They drop off fresh soldiers to try to hold the line. They're preparing the second-line defensive positions. As Russian infantry fall back to other defensive lines, they leave a few soldiers behind to slow the advance. The Ukrainian squad is tasked with assaulting the ridge where dugouts are located on the elevated position overlooking the whole area. They handle it by the book. A Ukrainian sniper has overwatch here we can see, protecting the assaulting element as they attack the dugouts. Here we see a Ukrainian PKM machine gun team is also providing overwatch for the assault on the trench. Their whole job is to look for enemy who might expose themselves and provide suppressing fire. The Ukrainian soldiers assaulting are Team Rubik. They use radios to communicate with command, who has a drone view on the ridge and eyes on defensive fortifications. They're told to clear the next 4 dugouts. Team Rubik finds an old rifle, and he jokes that it's a Tusken Raider rifle from Star Wars. He also finds some AK-12s and RPGs.
Looks like a what is that, a Mosin? Mosin Nagant?
That they'll use later. All the dugouts so far that have been cleared have been empty. They just toss grenades into each one to be sure, but this one...
That might have been a Car 98K, dude. Old school.
Is occupied. A Russian infantryman, waiting to ambush them to slow them down, throws a grenade at the Ukrainians. Each side exchanges grenades, but the Russian one lands. 2 of the Ukrainians are wounded by the shrapnel, but they survive. The leader of the team, Rubik, starts applying a tourniquet to his arm. This is when the Overwatch PKM team now kicks in. They start laying down suppressive fire on the occupied dugout. More team members begin launching rifle-mounted VOG grenades as soon as they get word that the Rubik team has fallen back a safe distance away. The Russians are able to retreat back from their position and fall back. From the Russians' perspective, this is what they were aiming to do: slow down the Ukrainian advance and attrit the incoming forces, while team members are able to set up better defensive fortifications to the rear. Since then, Russian forces have pushed back through some of this territory after regrouping once again, showing again why being able to retreat in an orderly way in the long term is so important. I think this engagement shows why air power has difficulty winning wars outright. It requires men to push forward through trenches, clearing small dugouts, and it requires the infantrymen at the edges of battle, and it often comes down to the will of 2 people. The next engagement is an American Special Forces called dugout, while they retreat, aiming to back from.
So we watched this full assault as well. This was a while back, but excuse me, this was really cool. And something you heard Cappy say was a little bit further back here. These 2 guys were tasked with basically clearing all 4 of these bondages or bunkers, and this is pretty common practice, because you don't want to do more than that, because you'll start tripping over each other in the trenches. The too big of a unit will draw, or a fire team will draw too much attention. It could draw attention from drones. You could make too much noise. So usually 2 people is as effective as it's going to get. And then you only are concerned with killing the people in that bunker, which it becomes kind of an even playing field at that point, right? Because you know they're not going to have 30 fucking people in that little bunker. It's usually 1 or 2 people. So it kind of reminds me of like the 300 Spartans, right? In the movie where, well, in history, but they had a smaller force against a massive force, but they funneled them into this, into the passage to where they could only be an even amount of people versus an even amount of people, and then they just chopped away at the larger force that way. Similar here. They're kind of breaking it down, even force versus even force, 2 versus 2, kill these guys, 2 versus 2, kill these guys, 2 versus 2, you know what I mean?
Use radios to communicate with command, who is a drone view. Push forward through power has difficulty winning all dugouts to the will of 2 people. The next engagement is an American Special Forces battle inside Iraq. American Delta Force commandos and their Kurdish partners conducted a risky pre-dawn raid against the prison being run by ISIS on October 22nd, 2015. One of the only rare examples of footage released by Delta Force. The tightly orchestrated raid started at a prison in the outskirts of Hawaji, which is located 7 kilometers north of the town of Kirkuk province. Their mission is to prevent the gruesome mass execution of hostages that are being held by a group of ISIS fighters. It was a race against the clock because intelligence had flagged a horrifying development. Satellite imagery had revealed the enemy had started digging mass graves right next to the prison compound. They were making the obvious preparations for executions. Kurdish authorities believed that their hostages faced immediate death, so they made the move to formally request United States support to carry out a direct action rescue. The plan was for US forces to fly in with Kurdish units and deliver them to the target. Anyone who's been on a raid knows how chaotic and challenging it can be, a mission like this at night. The adrenaline rush can make it difficult to even think straight. 80 operators, including 30 Delta Force, loaded into 3 Chinook helicopters for the infiltration. Coalition jets struck roads and likely reinforcement routes ahead of the assault to block any incoming ISIS reinforcements. Once on the ground, the teams attempted to breach the prison walls using explosives, but the breach failed, and the assault stalled under heavy small arms fire from the enemy. And this is where we see how improvisation on the ground and adapting and overcoming is so important, because Master Sergeant Joshua Wheeler took action and ordered his forces to engage, even though that wasn't part of the original plan. The video shows US and Kurdish operators sprinting through hallways as gunfire hits around them. They're improvising at this point, and they're coming up with new solutions. They're taking the initiative. Hostages with their hands up are urged to keep moving. The camera pans past an ISIS flag and dark office interiors. A hostage is frisked by the operators. Inside the building,
God, what a nightmare that kind of an operation would be, dude. Like part of me is like, man, that would be so cool, right? You get to kick down some doors and shit, but then the amount of confusion once you get in there, you've got all these doors, you've got the enemy that looks like the same, that looks similar to the hostages. Fuck, man, it's a lot of moving parts, a lot of room for mistakes.
The combat was brutal. Wheeler's team entered the courtyard and provided covering fire to enable movement toward the first main building. In that process, he was struck by enemy small arms fire. Another Delta team led by then Sergeant First Class Thomas Payne scaled the walls separately and gained entry into the second building, rescuing 36 hostages. Payne's team then consolidated for exfiltration. In total, the raid secured the release of 70 hostages, 20 ISIS militants were killed, and 6 were detained. 4 Kurdish fighters were wounded, and the American Master Sergeant Joshua Wheeler was KIA.
Damn.
And directly after the team extracted, an F-15 Eagle fighter jet bombed the prison into complete dust. It's an example of how quick decisions by soldiers, individual infantrymen on the ground, and sacrifice can change the outcome of a battle. In September 2020, Thomas Payne was awarded the Medal of Honor for valor during the raid, and he became the first living Delta Force member to receive that honor. When you look at all these engagements side by side, from the battles in Kharkiv to Sudan, Syria to Gaza, I think a pattern starts to emerge.
My God.
Big, fancy Sudan, Syria to Gaza, I think
What the fuck is that, dude? Some kind of anti-vehicle rifle? God, it's ugly.
Pattern starts to emerge. Big, fancy stealth fighters have an impact on the fight, but it's still the infantryman who decides how it ultimately ends, who decides what territory is held. The common thread is that split-second human decisions to move forward or freeze currently would decide if an army collapses like the one did in Syria or in Afghanistan, or if they continue to slug it out. There's something intangible about that I think that we can learn from watching combat footage. If you want to see more rundowns like this and analysis with these map animations, there are 2 episodes that we finished right here that you can watch.
Check out Cappy's stuff, you guys. Check out his videos. He, like I said, he's one of the best to do this, to make this kind of content. And he was in the military. He knows his shit. So very cool stuff, man. Appreciate you, Cappy, for letting us break down your video, even though I didn't ask. But I'll tag you everywhere I can to make sure you get all the love for it as much as possible. You guys, please like, share, subscribe. Help me blow this channel up. The more people that we can get to see this channel and become more informed, more well-educated on foreign fighter units here in Ukraine, potentially the more foreigners we can save, right? So Discord link down below, Azov application down below. That's it. And Cappy's link down below. Love you guys. We'll see you in the next video.